Hey guys, and welcome to a tutorial on how we use Ableton Live to run our services at First Baptist Church, Kirksville. We use Ableton Live in order to operate a metronome and cues track in the background for our in-ears. We use it to automate our slides, and then we also use it to run backing tracks like piano, drums, bass guitar, and things like that in the background. In this video, I'm going to walk you through step-by-step how to create those and how to put them together into a worship service so that you can use it at your church. Some of the things you're going to need is a MacBook or some sort of computer that can be Windows or Mac OS to run Ableton Live on. And the next thing you're going to need is some sort of means of getting those signals from your soundboard to your computer, or vice versa, from your computer to your sound card. The last thing you're going to want to have is some sort of MIDI controller, like a keyboard that you can use to play notes and play MIDI notes and control things. And that'll be mostly used for recording the backing tracks you'll play with your songs. Our church doesn't have a lot of money, so instead of buying these backing tracks, we create them ourselves here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dive you into one of our songs that I've already created. I'm going to break up the individual pieces and show you what those look like. After I've shown you what they look like, I'm going to show you how to make them from scratch. So here I am sitting here in front of one of our songs in Ableton Live. This song is There's Nothing That Our God Can't Do. Now, for those that aren't super familiar with Ableton Live, this video isn't here to instruct you on everything, but I'll try and give you tips and tricks as we go. You'll notice that I have different groupings of tracks. I have markers, clicks and cues, tracks and buses. The markers channel is meant to just help denote what is where in the song, right? Where are you sitting in the song? It's literally just empty MIDI clips that I've named whatever that section of the song is. And so you can go through and tell where in the song you're editing. Inside the click and cues track, I have 6 different things. First thing is a tempo track. This is simply an empty audio clip that you can use to set the metronome speed of your song. You can set the tempo with it. The click track is something that just contains these little notes that tap back and forth and help create a metronome for you guys to listen to on stage. The cues are something that we cue in together here, and I'll show you one. They make certain sounds. They can say chorus or verse or pre-chorus. This is using a loop community instrument, but you can find any that you want. These are to help you keep in track and make sure you don't lose track of where you are in the song. And the last 3 things that I have are these 3 select playlist item, and trigger slide functions. These are for Pro Presenter. Okay, so we use Pro Presenter on our Mac Mini up in our sound booth. And what I do is I connect this MacBook Pro to the Mac Mini via an Ethernet cable connection, and I'm able to send and receive MIDI signals to Pro Presenter. Now, I'm not going to show you how to set up to receive a device on Pro Presenter. There are plenty of other videos on that, and I don't got time for it today. These 3 channels are what we use to select the song and then cue those slides, so that each time you play the song, they'll be properly cued and set up in time perfectly. It eliminates a lot of human error. This last grouping of tracks is tracks and buses, is what I call them. These contain the basic instruments that I record for each service. In philosophy, I don't think that Ableton Live needs to be used to do things that you can't already do yourselves. I don't want you to limit the creativity of your band. What we primarily use it for is to replace the instruments that we would otherwise have, but someone's not there that week or something's missing or you need a little more filler. Okay, so the instruments that I have are a piano, I have 2 pad tracks, a bass guitar, and 2 drum tracks. Now you'll see these buses up here. I put the drums on different tracks and I bust them into one drum channel, and the pianos and pads all go together into a piano bus. But so then you can send just that one signal to the soundboard, and the sound mixer can mix those individually instead of just mixing an overall send afterwards. So now that I've showed you guys what we use for our service as far as Ableton Live goes for an individual song, I'm going to show you a bit of how to create that on your own, or how I create it, so that you can have a method for yourself. Okay, so I'm sitting here looking at a new project in Ableton Live. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to nix all of these channels, okay? I want to be able to tell where I'm at. So I'm going to take this MIDI clip channel and I'm going to rename it to markers. Okay, and I'm going to make it black because I just think it looks best to keep it that way. Now, I'm going to set up a basic format of each of our songs. Since we want to paste them together, it's often good to have a little space at the beginning that you don't necessarily need to put any sound in, but you can just keep it there in case you need space before the song starts. I call this the pre-song loop. Okay, the next thing that I do is I know that we always want 8 counts when going into one of our songs. So I'm going to hit my Command-Shift-M is what I'm hitting, or you can right-click and make a new MIDI clip, or click Create and insert a MIDI clip. But Command-Shift-M or Control-Shift-M if you're on a Windows computer, and then I rename it Command-R, or again you can right-click and hit rename, and I'm going to make this one Countdown. Okay, so this is going to be the section of a song where our 8 beats happen that count us in. And then after that, I'm assuming, depending on what song you're doing, you're going to have 4 bars of intro. After that, I'm assuming you might have, an 8-bar verse. And so you just highlight, Command-Shift-M. This is where you decide the structure of your song. So this is kind of an important first step, okay? Now, we're not going to build the whole song here, but this is how you by default set it up, okay? Because we're going to make 2 audio tracks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to make our tempo click, okay? So just go ahead and make 2 audio tracks. And if you don't understand how this works, just kind of follow me as I say. Okay, we want no input on the first one. The second one, we want to send it to the one above it. So I'm sending signal from this to this. Now what I want to do is I basically want to make an empty audio clip, okay? So I'm just going to start over here, and since this is sending audio here, this has something coming into it. I'm just going to hit record, and I'm going to give it a minute. I'm going to let it record maybe 8 bars. It doesn't really matter how long it is. You can always warp it and stretch it, but I like to do 8 bars just because sometimes it can be a little bit weird with making it shorter than that. So now that I've recorded that, I can come back in and I'm going to rename this tempo clip. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this channel. We don't need it anymore. My usual setup is everything that has to do with tempo, click, cues, I make it white. So I'm going to go ahead and do that too. Tempo. And now we have that. Now this, you can click and hold shift and drag and it'll extend the clip. You can make it as long as you want. You just want it to be the length of your song in the end. The next channel we're going to want is another MIDI track, and we're going to make this one a loop community track. So if you go on loop community, you can find lots of different packs that you can use and put together, but this is in particular what I'm going to use. QPack, Ableton, loop community, pack, English. Okay, so I'm going to drag this in here. It may actually give me 2 tracks with it. I think it will. It did. So I'm going to delete this track. I don't need it. I'm going to recolor this one to white because I want it to be white. And this one I'm going to recolor to white because I want it to be white too. We don't need that. We don't need that. Okay, so I'm going to move that up here because again, I've got a system and I'm just showing you how I kind of do things. I don't need it to say LC for loop community, so we'll just call it click. I don't need it to say LC, so we'll just call it cues. Now, starting at the countdown, we are going to want Command-Shift-M, a click track. And we are going to want it to go accent, unaccented, unaccented, unaccented. And then we're going to want it to loop. You notice if you click and drag here, it's going to loop out. Okay? So we take that to, for now, this is the end of our song. We take it to there and we stop. The cues is something a little bit different. So I'm going to show you, since we're going into the intro, I'm going to make a clip called intro, and I'm going to have it count up 2, 3, 4 on those beats. And see, I'm just lining it up over here. And then since it's going in the intro, I want intro on beat 1. Listen to what that sounds like real quick.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
Now what you can do is you can, copy this and you can paste it over here, rename this one to verse, and then take that note and move it up from intro to verse. And if you have a chorus, you can do that, and so on, and you paste those through. That way, as you're listening, the metronome comes in, intro,
2, 3, 4.
and you're playing intro, you're playing intro, you're playing intro, and then as soon as it comes up to the verse, it's going to make this.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
I can't explain to you how important the cues are because it helps you to stay lined up with the tracks. If you ever get off, you just wait for the next click track to lead you into the next section, and you can jump back in with the band. The next thing that we're going to want to do is, I'm going to go ahead and minimize those. I want to get my Pro Presenter lined up. All right, so I'm going to go over here to a resource file that I found online. It's just called Pro Presenter Cues Free Project. You can find it on their website, Renewed Vision. And you open this up, and it gives you a whole bunch of different commands, okay? And so we're going to want a select playlist command, we're going to want a select playlist item command, and we're going to select a trigger slide commands. Okay, those are the 3 channels we're going to want. And so then what you do is, I'm not going to teach you how Pro Presenter works, but what you do is you just drag in the playlist that song is in. You select which item it is in the playlist, like if it's the 3rd part of the presentation or the 4th part, and then you start triggering slides. Okay, so each one of these is going to send a MIDI cue. 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay, now This all depends on what song you have, and I'm not going to walk you through everything, but basically depending on how your ProPresenter is set up, you select playlist 1, select playlist item 1, slide 2, and so on. So after you've got these kind of things set in place and you know what your slides look like and you're dragging them through, I think that this is a good point to talk to you about connection things. There's an app called Audio MIDI Setup on the Mac, okay? And when you do that, and when there's another computer on your network, I'm not going to necessarily show you how to set this up. There are videos out there for it. You can add a session, and any other Mac device that is connected to the network that this MacBook is connected to is going to be able to, you're going to be able to see it in the directory, okay? I can't see it because I'm not in the sanctuary right now. Instead, I'm in my office. But when that time comes, you just create a session. You give yourself a local name so that you know what this session's called, and a bonjour name. The bonjour name shows you what other people see you as. You just click on this and you click connect. That's something that if you need help with, there are lots of other videos about how to connect Ableton to ProPresenter. The next thing you're going to want to do is maybe do a little bit of cleanup. So I usually select all these tracks and I just use Command click, and I go up. And if you hit Command G, you can group all those tracks together, and then I would just call that clicking cues. The next thing you're going to want is instruments, okay? And this is where a familiarity with Ableton is really important. This is where you get to choose what instruments you want to have in the band. You can stop right now and have a metronome and have a click that's being sent to your soundboard, and you can have your slides automated and not do anything with the background instruments. And that's cool. A lot of people do that. But if you want to add instruments, here's the baseline for how you do that. You can use Sunday keys, you can use VST plugins, whatever you want. I'm going to go ahead and just use some VST plugins that I've purchased. So I'm going to drag over Complete Control. It's just a software that has tons of instruments in it. And I'm going to put in a piano. I'm going to just use the basic one because I'm not really caring exactly what instruments I have here. I'm going to do a piano. I'm going to drag it over again, make a new one. This time I'm going to do a bass guitar, or Rickenbacker, maybe Ideal Standard. Again, this just depends on whatever instruments you like. This is something that is really hard to standardize and to show people. You just have to pick what you want. After the bass, I think I want drums, so I'm going to go to the drum lab and I'm going to pick Big Bright Room. Okay. Now, once you have these, go ahead and group them together and call this tracks. Okay. Okay, so once you've done that, this is where a MIDI keyboard comes in. You can use a MIDI keyboard to record the different instruments that you have in your tracks here. You can record a piano, is what we did this one. You can do a bass, is what we did on this one. I'm just renaming these with Command R, and drums. You can plug in your MIDI keyboard and you can, hit record on the piano and then press record, and once it starts, sit there and play along with your piano and record it along to the song. We're not going to take the time to do that today because it's just not in our purview. If you know how to play piano, that's something you can do so that you can have those instruments ready for you on Sunday. You can record those different instruments. The last thing I want to show you guys how to do is to make a worship set. Okay, so all of these songs are obviously individual, but you need them together so that you can operate your service. So what we need to do is we need to take each of those individual songs and drag them together into the same set so that you can use it on Sunday morning. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just clearing some of these keys here, is I'm going to go over to our launcher, and each time I make one of those songs, I save one of those songs into our individual song sessions folder. I'll speak more to this at the very end. Whenever I save that song, I save it as a different song, and then I leave it in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a basic 2-song setup and let you decide from there. So let's drag over Blessed Be Your Name. Okay, so we have Blessed Be Your Name here, and let's go ahead and minimize these, and let's pick another song. I'm going to do Here For You, Matt Redman. Okay, now that we have Here For You loaded in, let's go ahead and minimize that and let's zoom out a little bit and look at what we have. So we have 2 sets of clips here. Since these two are identical in setup, the clicks and cues are identical in setup, you can paste them over each other. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this second song, Here For You. I'm going to copy and paste it. Boom. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the tracks over. Now we can delete all of this and remove these. You might see where I'm going with this. Now, if you have multiple songs, you can stream them one into the next and the next and the next until you're finished. Okay, but this isn't quite ready, right? If I go to the beginning and I hit play and I'm listening to the songs and we're going along, things will seem fine right until I get here. And then I'll be in between songs and I'll only have a certain amount of time to get from one song to the next. Okay, so this requires one additional clip, and this is the final step really to making your service put together, okay? And you use markers to do this. So go ahead and add, or locators. Add a locator up here and let's call it loop. And let's add another locator here before here for you. Let's make sure that it's square on that line, and same with this. Okay, and then we're also we're gonna want one at the beginning here, right at the countdown, because that's where you want the locator to go for Blessed Be Your Name. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make it to where after you play Blessed Be Your Name, this song, this section of the song will loop. This silence here will loop until you're ready to move to the next one and cue up the next song. So what we want to do is we want to make a MIDI track, and let's take that MIDI track and we're gonna call it IAC Driver, because that's what we're gonna use it for. You can also just call it Looper if you want. We'll make it yellow so it really stands out. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to go to your Audio MIDI Setup app once more. Go up here to Window or View, and you want to show MIDI Studio. Okay, and what we're interested in is this IAC driver. This is a device that allows you to connect different apps on your computer, like Ableton to ProPresenter or other things. In this case, we're going to use it to connect Ableton to Ableton. Okay, so I've already created one here, but all you'll do is you'll hit this plus button, and you'll want to make sure that it has one MIDI in, one MIDI out, okay? I call mine bus one loops, all right? So you make your changes, you hit apply, you just want it to be 1 and 1, and call it whatever you will. So whenever you go in here, you say, I want you to send this to the loops driver, okay? But you're not quite ready. If you hit Command comma or go to Live and Preferences at the top left, whenever you come down to the Link, Tempo, and MIDI section, you're gonna want to have the IAC driver as an output, and then when you come down here in the output sections, loops, you say I want it to output on tracks, okay? And then I want it to input as a remote. That means that it'll send out what it sees on the track over here, and it'll receive it as a remote in the computer, okay? So let's close our preferences. If you don't know what that means, that's fine, just check it off and you'll see how to do it. Now, when we set this to say IAC driver bus one loops, and we can set it to, well, you don't need to set it to that, just all ins. It doesn't matter, this channel's not taking any input. Now we can create a track. So let's create a little MIDI clip here, Command Shift M, and let's call this Looper. Okay, I scroll always to the top and I just use the top note. I click right there, I hit MIDI, make sure that my marker is set here, and I want it to go, and I want it to use this. I click on that, and then I hit spacebar and play. And what I just did, if you come over here, was I mapped the note G8 on this track to this button. What this button is it goes to the last locator, right? To the one that's previous to it. So now, when we played this section, and it gets to this note, it's going to hit that note, and at the end of that bar, it's going to jump to the previous locator. And it's going to do that consistently, okay? So we're halfway there. Now, whenever we finish our song, and it goes into this loop section, a time that you can put in pads or something else if you want, it's going to loop through this section until you're ready to move on, right? And let's watch it do it one more time. It's going to hit that note, and then at the end of that measure, it's going to loop to that previous locator. Boom. It'll do that forever. Okay, but now we're not quite done. We want to be able to move on. Well, this is where Ableton has a really neat function called key. All right, if you hit key, then whatever button you press on the keyboard, you can map it to these markers or to anything that lights up. So I'm going to press on Blessed Be Your Name, and I'm going to press the key 1. Over here, it's going to show that I did that. If I scroll over and go to the next section, I can press on this and hit 2. Okay, so now, whenever I deselect key and I press the 1 key, it takes me here. When I press the 2 key and spacebar, it takes me here. So when I'm looping through this section's looping, as soon as I'm done, I just press 2 and it takes me there. Just like that. Okay? So now we're almost there, but say you want, you can do that with as many songs as you want. You copy the songs, you place them next to each other, but now you're like, my service is over. What do I do? What I would do is I create this loop marker, and I create another one about 4 measures away, just like all my default other ones are, and I call this message, and then I type in another thing, and I call this one stopper. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this looper thing again. So first, I want another looper, so I'm just going to copy this one. I could make a whole new clip and just put that note in there, but I'm going to make a new one right here. And then I'm going to make another clip here, and I'm going to make it a stopper clip, okay? So let me re-highlight that. I'm going to call it stopper. And now I've already used the top note, right? The top note's already doing something. So if I put that top note there, then it would stop it. Or it would loop it, and I don't want that. I want it to stop, okay? So I'm going to take that, now that I've selected, I'm going to hit MIDI, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to hit stop, spacebar. So now you can see that it's mapped F#8 to the stop button. So we unselect that, and now the last thing we want to do is let's click on message, let's click key, and then click message, and let's make message 3, just the next button on the keyboard over, right? So now, whenever I hit 3, and I hit play, it's going to skip to there, and it's going to hit that, and it's going to stop. So whenever I finish my final song, it's going to enter this loop section, and say you want a prayer time before you have everyone be seated, or you want something like that, then you can hit this and it'll loop, and it'll keep going until you're ready to be done, and then you just press 3 and it goes there and it ends the song. Okay, now a few tips and just things that you can use that are helpful is if you have a sermon bumper or something that you need to cue up at the end of all those, something that happens right after you're done saying your prayer, well then go ahead and open this up and paste in a few more slide changes here in this message section. Select playlist 1, select playlist item, whatever, and cue the slide that has the bumper on it, and you can put all those commands there, and that way when you press 3 it'll automatically cue the sermon bumper and it will stop the music. And then if you want a song for invitation, just drop it on the other side of that. It's super modular. One other tip that I want to give you as you're automating your slides and you're building your surface is that at the beginning of every single song, you'll see how I have these cues set to select playlist 1 and playlist item 4 and slide 1. I have these delayed. I have them staggered. You don't ever want for the same track to be sending multiple MIDI signals to ProPresenter, because ProPresenter doesn't always do a great job of reading MIDI signals at the same time. It can get them confused and do them in the wrong order. So what you want to do is you want to stagger these a little bit, and not much. See, when I'm zoomed out, they're very close. Only when I zoom in can you tell, oh, they're in different spots. Okay, so all you got to do is, as you build your individual songs, once you're done with all of them, you make a master playlist. And see, I have all of these songs that I've recorded over time. Once you make them once, you don't have to make them again. Whenever you're ready to do that service, you just drag them into a new set and you make that your new worship set. That leads me into my final point, and that is hard drive organization. Okay, so you'll see over here in my browser that I have 4 main hard drive folders. This Sunday Keys thing is just a resource folder that contains some piano sounds and things like that that I really like. It's helpful to have them on this hard drive so that I can reference them. And so Ableton Live, templates, and resources. These are things that I have saved over time, like the ProPresenter file. And also what you can do is you can make the beginnings of some of these songs, ones that are in 3/4 or 4/4, and you can save those templates so that the things that come as a default for some of the songs, you can save. For example, let's look at Tempo 4/4. This is a template I use for the start of most of my songs. It comes with a pre-looped click track and some of the bass line, verse, chorus, bridge, instrumental, intro cues, and the beginning markers, as well as the beginnings that you need to cue your slides on ProPresenter. Since I use these every time, it's helpful to just make one of these and save it, and then when I'm going to make a new song, I drag this in, I save that as a new song, and move on. And so I have these for each of the different tempos. I also have some transitions and tonic pads that I put into my songs or in between the songs to make the transitions a little more full. Okay, my next file is the container for all of our songs that we've done with Ableton so far. We started last December and we've got quite a few in here. So each one of these, whenever I'm ready to put it in a song, I just click and drag it over into my new worship set list. And then what I do is I save that set list in this folder. And so everything is contained on this single hard drive, so all the references don't get messed up. And then whenever it's time to load up a service, you can just click on that and you have it saved and it's ready to go. So those are some of the basic tricks for how to throw Ableton together. I know that may seem like a lot, but this video's entire purpose was to be used as a reference for a new worship pastor that's moving into this church, and also anybody else that's trying to learn how to use Ableton. This is how we do it, and I hope that this is a good resource for you. Thank you so much for watching.